that better? Good evening, everyone. It's nice to see such a nice big crowd here tonight. My name is Fred Obie. I'm the general manager at The Leader. It's my job to welcome you here tonight. This is co-sponsored by the League of Women Voters, The Leader, and the American Association of University Women. And to open the evening tonight, I'd like to introduce Jackie Ossie, who would like to say a few words for the League.
Hi, thanks for coming to discuss this very important issue. The League has been really big on education for its entire history. And we've held a position since 1975 stating that all programs mandated by the legislature should be fully funded by the state. Maintenance and operation costs of local school districts should be fully funded by the state, and the state should contribute to the costs of in-service training. So now we just got to figure out how. The League has some information on the back table there, and we have applications for membership, and we would like to have men join our group as well. We have a couple already, so thanks for coming.
All right, well, what we're going to do tonight is hear from our panel. We're all coming to this issue of statewide funding for education from different perspectives, but all good perspectives that we can all learn from. And then when they're all done speaking, we'll have some questions from the floor, and hopefully we engage in a good dialogue over this issue. I'd like to introduce the panel. Starting here, Bruce Cowan has been teaching in Fort Townsend for over 30 years. For most of his career, he taught primary grade classrooms. Over the last few years, he's been a middle school music teacher at Heron Middle School. He is also part of the local music scene, playing with his own combo and leading Ukuleles Unite, a small revolution of youth players. Amity Butler is a national board certified teacher, having taught in the Port Angeles Public Schools for 15 years. She has been the principal at Franklin Elementary School for 4 years. She has coached high school swimming, and she is active in the community, including supporting her two sons' activities in music and athletics. Kevin Wege is a firefighter, paramedic, husband and father, lifelong Washington resident. He is currently serving his 4th term in the House of Representatives. He has 2 children, and his wife is a teacher. Jennifer James Wilson and her husband Scott have been residents of Fort Townsend since 1989 and are co-owners of the Fort Townsend Jefferson County Leader newspaper. Their 3 children attended Fort Townsend schools from kindergarten through the 12th grade, the last 2 graduating in 2009. Jennifer has volunteered in classrooms, chaperoned field trips, served on site councils and hiring committees, and in 2007 was a founding board member of the Fort Townsend Education Foundation. She was elected to the school board in 2010 and is currently serving the 2nd year as chair. And finally, last but not least, Mike Blair. Served as superintendent for the Chimicum School District from 2003 until his retirement in 2010. Prior to that, he was the superintendent of Kettle Falls School District in Eastern Washington. He was elected as the president of the Network for Excellence in Washington Schools in 2005 and served as its president through the Supreme Court ruling in 2012, which is what brings us all here tonight. So that's our panel, and I guess we will begin with Mike to get some kind of an overview of what we're talking about.
Yes, I would like to certainly thank all of you for being here to talk about education and education funding. Certainly thank our panel for being here, especially Kevin, who I know is extremely busy down in Olympia and took the time to come up here and be with us. So thank you very much for that. Also, we have a few other dignitaries that I'd like to introduce. As you know, they were having trouble finding folks who would step on board to participate in this particular lawsuit for ample funding. and a couple of attorneys came and made a presentation to the Chimicum School Board, and it was only my second year. I just kind of sat back and said, well, this will pass and move on. And son of a gun, if the chair of the board or previous chair and vice president of the State Board Association raised his hand and said, yeah, let's join that lawsuit. So that's Quint Goodrich right here. And Quint was, at that time, had been on the board about 2 decades, so he was very experienced, had been through a lot of budget cuts. And also, I wanted some of my previous board members there. You guys have kind of just raised your hand. Chimicum School Board that jumped on board for this lawsuit. And most important, we needed a plaintiff. We needed someone who had standing. We needed someone who would take the charge and represent parents and children. And so our lead attorney asked me, do I know anyone? I said, well, I think I've got someone in mind. It's a great family and it would represent us well, not only in the community, but also in any kind of promotions that we do. And by golly, she agreed to it. Now, she knew she had to testify for a day in court. I don't think she would have agreed to it. But we have with us today the McCleary Decision, Stephanie McCleary and her family. Stand up, Stephanie. Done a tremendous job. So I was really trying to be brief, but I want to try to give a historical perspective and then kind of detail what the trial court said and what the Supreme Court also said in their ruling. So historically, you go back to about 1980 and something called the Heron Decision, which basically upheld the Seattle School District's lawsuit. They had double failed the levy. It was very apparent to everyone at that time that a lot of levy dollars were going to basic education. It's a no-no. And so the Supreme Court at that time ruled in favor of that trial and upheld the decision of the trial court, which was Durant, so it was named after the judge, unlike our case, which is named after the plaintiff, Stephanie McCleary, and her family. So that's where it kind of started. That was one of the first major lawsuits, and the Supreme Court said, yes, states, you're responsible for what the Constitution says. That's to provide ample funding for the educational opportunities of all children in the state. And they defined some other things like basic education, includes special education, and transportation, gave kind of a foundation there. And the legislature responded pretty well for a couple of years. They got levies down to about 10% and increased funding. But that didn't sustain itself. And then in 1992, another game changer was the House Bill 1209, which basically instituted year-end testing. WASL, year-end testing, courses that you see now. That started in 1992. So what that meant was, not only a student in my district in Kettle Falls, a very poor district, was going to be measured on the same test, which is fair, as a child in Mercer Island, a very wealthy district. And so that particular issue indicated to the legislature, everybody, look, we've got to make sure the funding is adequate for all kids, not just those who live in rich areas and rich districts, whether they have 2% free and reduced or 70% free and reduced. So that was a game changer. Now it's a different expectation. And then, of course, funding continued to decline. Expectations went up with the WASL and all the expectations of graduation requirements, and expectations went up and funding went down. So finally, a group of folks led by Brent and the Chimicum School Board and School District started out. We were the only district involved, and then finally about 15 districts got involved. Seattle, Edmonds, Bellevue, Spokane, a few others. We had a meeting, and at that meeting, I think I left the room, and while I was gone, they elected me president of this association. So I went from this Quint Goodrich raising his hand to being president of this organization. So we met, we talked, we got more members. We have now over 420 members, about 200 school districts, Washington State PTA, League of Women Voters, Association of University Women, Seattle Urban League. We have a lot of members, a lot of community groups. And the groups met. We have an executive council, 8 members on that, overturned the president. Not anymore. I did retire after the Supreme Court ruling. And so we decided, look, we met with Governor Gregoire one more time. She said I needed to meet with you, so we went down there and met with her in one of her rooms over there, and she said, give me a chance to put this budget forward. We didn't feel the budget was adequate, met the needs of the kids of this state, the 1 million kids of this state, so we didn't follow suit. The suit went to trial court. Judge Ehrlich ruled on it, and we kept our fingers crossed. It was about a 17-day trial, a long trial with tons of testimony and depositions, and the judge ruled everything in our favor. And he went beyond that. He wrote such a tight ruling. If you ever get a chance to read it, it's well written, and it really lays out our whole case, that we felt we would win at the Supreme Court level. So, of course, they did appeal, the state did appeal, went to the Supreme Court, and we got to go in front of them back in the fall of 2011. So, the Supreme Court heard the case. You get 1 hour in front of them to make your case. 1 hour. And all 9 justices voted unanimously that the state is not meeting Article 9 of the Constitution. They are not providing the ample provisions for the education of all children in this state. They found them to be constitutionally defective in that area. And the Supreme Court held up Judge Ehrlich's ruling. Well, there's a key thing that happened here that's impressive. As I said, the Supreme Court said in 1980, said, look, you go ahead and fix this problem. The state legislature did the best they could, but it kept declining. What happened was the state legislature went in front of the trial judge and then really hammered at the Supreme Court hearing how House Bill 2261, if you want to look that up, but that's a significant House bill here, 2261, is the plan. This is what we're going to do to meet our constitutional duty. Not only are we going to do this, Your Honors, all 9 of them, but we're going to make sure it's completed by 2018. You have our word on that. That's what we're going to do. That's our plan. I think that the strategy of the state at that time was that the Supreme Court justice said, well, that's great. Go ahead and do it. Well, they did say that. They said, that's a great plan. We expect you to do it. Oh, by the way, unlike the Supreme Court of 1980, we're going to maintain jurisdiction because we don't really trust that you will be able to, and I don't say this in a demeaning way, we don't think that you can withstand the political pressures that face you all the time and meet the constitutional duty. You haven't demonstrated that you're able to do that. And so they did. They retained jurisdiction. That is a game changer. So what happens is, Kevin and the legislature will put out a budget, and that'll be signed by the governor sometime in June probably. And then they have 60 days to report back to the Supreme Court how they did on meeting their constitutional duty. And then we have, news organization, we have 30 days after that to reply as to what we think was done at the legislative level. So this has happened once. After the last legislative session, the legislature filed their Supreme Court filing, and then we filed ours, and the Supreme Court basically said, no, you didn't get it done. Just slowing down your cuts is not cutting it. You've got to show measurable, steady progress for full funding by 2018. So you hear a lot of numbers kicked around, and I think I'll answer a lot of questions as we go through the evening tonight, but the numbers are real. House Bill 2261, the cost for that has been, and the numbers I give you, by the way, are the legislature or the state's own numbers. They're not News's numbers. They're not numbers we pulled out of the air. These are the real numbers that the state has determined the costs are going to be. To implement 2261, which is sort of things like full-day kindergarten, smaller class size, fully fund transportation. By the way, this is probably why the Supreme Court didn't trust it might get done. The legislature promised, by God, they would fully fund education in 1982. And 30 years later, we still don't have full funding for, full fund transportation. And we still don't have full funding for transportation. So I think that's one of the reasons we retain jurisdiction. And so to meet the 2018 number, it's about $3 billion per year. Those are state numbers. That's the increase just to meet House Bill 2261. That's what the state said to those Supreme Court justices, this is what we're going to do. We guarantee, we promise that. And that's about, and then I have a little chart in front of you that kind of shows what steady measurable progress would be. In our mind, that's where maybe some differences are. Now that $3 billion does not include salary increases, does not include capital improvements, and does not include inflation. That's strictly to implement the promise made by the legislature that the Supreme Court agreed with. Did I do that in 10 minutes?
Pretty close, pretty close.
So I'll try to answer questions, but that's where we are right now. We look forward to seeing the legislature meet their constitutional duties. Thank you.
Thank you.